So the discussion for today is about obligations and contracts. Okay? You can find the definition of obligation in your Article 1156. Okay? This is the definition of what is an obligation. So, as you can see, okay, and as provided in your Article 1156, an obligation is a juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do, or not to do. Ibig sabihin yan, there are three prestations in an obligation. It can be to give, it can be to do, or not to do. Okay? So, an obligation is a legal tie, okay, which binds us according to the rules of the civil code to render something, okay? To render may mean to give, to do, or not to do, okay? What is obliged to forbear from doing. It is also the juridical necessity to comply with prestation. Remember this one, okay? The basis of Article 1156 is found in the Spanish Civil Code. Okay? We see that an obligation consists in a prestation or undertaking. Ano tong sinasabi kong prestation? The other term for prestation is undertaking. Ibig sabihin, may gagawin ka. Anong gagawin mo? Ano yung obligasyon mo? It can be to give, to do, or not to do. Okay? So, always remember these important elements in an obligation. Ito po. Ito. Okay? So, first is your juridical or legal tie. The other term for juridical tie is legal tie. Okay? And another is your, of course, you have your prestation, and you know already what the three, okay, the three prestation, okay, and another one is your active subject and your passive subject. Okay, paano naman malalaman kung active subject kami or kami yung passive subject? From the word active and from the word passive. Okay, when we say active subject, this is the obligee or the creditor, the party who has the right to demand the performance of the obligation. So, the person, okay, who will be demanding for the performance of the obligation, yung mag-uutos or yung magre-require na gawin mo ito, ibigay mo sa akin to, that is the active subject. Kung sino ang meron yung right to demand, that is the active subject. How about the passive subject? Okay? Who is this passive subject? The passive subject is the obligor or the debtor. Okay? The party who has the duty to perform the obligation. Okay? From the word perform, di ba? Ang perform nag-start with letter P. So, please do not forget that one. The one who will perform the obligation is the passive subject. Okay? Always remember yung, okay, the right to demand or the power to demand, it's always the active subject. And the one who will be performing the obligation, it's the passive subject. Okay? Why is it that it is a juridical tie? Okay? Why is it that it's a legal tie? Ba't sinasabi natin juridical, ma'am? Ba't kailangan may word na juridical tie? Okay? Because, sabi sa batas, sabi ng Korte Suprema, okay, it is a juridical bond or the vinculum. Ano itong sinasabi ni ma'am na vinculum? Okay? In here, okay, you will not only have the responsibility, okay, to perform the obligation, but you will likewise have to comply the requirements, because in case you will fail to perform the obligation, example, hindi mo nasunod yung obligasyon, Okay? Hindi mo nasunod yung mga conditions. Hindi ka nag-perform kasi tinamad ka, nakatulog ka, o kaya nakalimutan mo yung obligasyon mo. Okay? D, okay? The active subject can have a cause of action against you. Okay? Remember that phrase, cause of action against you. Okay? We go with Article 1157. What is this Article 1157? In your Article 1157, okay, you can find there the 5 sources of obligations. Ano itong sinasabi nating 5 sources? Okay? No, sa Tagalog, okay, mga 5 pinanggalingan or mga dahilan kung bakit meron tayong obligasyon. Okay? Mga dahilan or sources, pinanggalingan ng mga obligasyon. Okay? What are those 5 obligations or 5 sources of obligations, I should say? Okay? These are the following. Ang shortcut po dyan is LCCAC. LCCAC. Letter L, C, Q, A, C. Okay? Bakit, ma'am, QQ din nakalagay? Anyway, I'll explain it mamaya. Okay? L for law, C for contract, okay? Q for quasi-contract, A for acts or omissions punishable by law or punished by law, and lastly is your quasi-delicts. Okay? Your delicts is, the other term for delicts is your acts or omissions punishable by law. Those are your crimes against your revised penal code. Okay? Always remember the 5 sources of obligation. I will let you recite later on, okay, the 5 sources of obligation. Okay. So, can you give us example, ma'am, of these 5 sources of obligation? Okay. First, we go with Article 1158 because it explains to us, okay, how sources of obligation arose from law. Okay. Lang po, naka-laptop kasi ako. Ayan. So, ayan, discuss muna natin ito. What is the concept of right versus obligation daw? Okay? Concept of right versus obligation. Anong pinagkaiba ng karapatan sa isang obligasyon? Okay? Accordingly, in every obligation, there is a right in favor of another. Okay? Kasi there is that right to demand. Okay? That is a right vested to the active subject. Okay? This right can be demanded and enforced by law. Why? Bakit demanded sa batas? Because there is a juridical bond or the so-called vinculum. Okay? The right must be rooted in any of the 5 sources of obligation. So, ibig sabihin, kahit saan doon, hindi kailangang lahat. Next one. So, yung sabi ko sa inyo kanina, in case you violated your obligation, you failed to perform your obligation, okay? These are the 3 remedies available to the active subject, okay? Kasi nga, hindi ka naka-perform ng maayos. You failed to perform. You have a poor performance, okay? So, in case you failed to give, you failed to do, and you failed also not to do, these are the remedies. Number 1, you memorize this one because I will ask you during your assessment. Number 1 is your specific performance or your sum of money. Ano tong specific performance? Okay? This specific performance is an action available to the active subject to require you to perform the action. Okay? You will now be mandated under the law to perform your obligation. Usually, Okay? It happens sa mga construction ng bahay. Let's just say the contractor failed to perform or failed to complete the construction of the house within a period of 6 months. Okay? In that case, hindi na kompleto yung bahay, that the active subject or the owner of the house, yung may-ari ng bahay, pwede siyang mag-file sa korte. Okay? At mag-demand for specific performance. Okay. Ano naman yung sum of money, ma'am? Ano yung sum of money? Okay. Let's just say, may utang yung tao sa'yo. Okay. Umutang si Pedro ng 100,000 sa'yo. That is just summary. Okay. Summary action kasi it's below the amount. Okay. Na within the jurisdiction of the municipal trial court. So, in that case, you can file for collection for sum of money in your municipal trial court and require that person to pay you. Ma'am, ang to pay, sa to give po ba yun or sa to do? It's to do. Okay? When we say to give, it's about delivery of the subject. But if it's to do, it's the performance of an obligation which includes to pay. Okay. Another action available is the rescission. Okay? The other term for rescission is cancellation. Ano tong cancellation, ma'am? Okay? Let's just say, nag-order ka ng cake sa, example lang po to sa Crown's Bake Shop. Kasi birthday, nung February 14 kasi Valentine's Day. Okay? Si Pedro mag-boyfriend, girlfriend. So, surprise ngayon ni Pedro si Ana ng cake. Okay? Bumili siya sa Cake's Bake Shop. Okay? However, ang nagpalagay si Pedro ng I love you, Ana. Happy Valentine's Day. So, nagpalagay naman siya ng greetings, ganun. Nung kinuha niya ng cake, hindi niya nagbayad na siya. Okay? Tanda niyo to, nagbayad na siya. Pero nung chinik niya, nung sumakay na siya sa sasakyan niya, chinik niya, ang nakalagay is Grace. Diba? Imagine mo na lang yun, mababad trip si Ana pag nakita niya ang nakalagay ay Grace. Okay? Baka isipin ni Ana, may ibang girlfriend na si Pedro. Okay? Can you cancel, okay, your order to Crown's Bake Shop even if you already paid? The answer there is of course yes. Okay? Because there is a breach on your right. So here, there must be a substantial breach. So, ang sabi ng batas ay hindi ka allowed na basta-basta na lang na mag-cancel. Hindi yan basta-basta. Okay? So here, there must be substantial or material breach. Okay? The policy of the law is to sustain the contract and to allow the obligor to perform the obligation. And of course, lastly, is your right to damages. Ano tong damages na sinasabi ni ma'am? Please do not forget the letter S. Okay? Damages. Hindi yan damage. Iba yung damage. Okay? Damage to property, yun yung nasira. Okay? Pero what we are, when we say damages, okay, these are the following. Mental. Shortcut known is mental. It can be a moral damages, exemplary damages, nominal damages, temperate damages, actual damages, or liquidated damages. Okay? Please remember those kasi I will let you enumerate it later on during your assessment. And what are these damages? I will discuss it later. Okay? Next one, we have the so-called doctrine of anticipatory breach. Ano to? We are anticipating some kind of violation. Okay, ano tong doctrine of anticipatory breach? Okay, accordingly, under this doctrine, an unqualified and positive refusal to perform a contract, though the performance thereof is not yet due, may, okay, if the renunciation goes to the whole contract, be treated as a complete breach which will entitle the injured party to bring his action and at once. This is a case settled by the Supreme Court, okay, Blossom and Company versus Manila Gas. Okay, in here, there is actually no violation yet. Okay, nakalagay dyan, no? No violation yet. However, there is that positive refusal to perform. Ayaw niya talaga mag-perform or to comply with the contract. Okay? Due na ba yung performance? Hindi pa. Required na ba talaga siya to perform? Hindi pa. Kaso, ayaw niyang mag-perform. Okay? In that case, it will now be treated, okay, as a complete breach. Ibig sabihin ng breach, a violation. Okay? Are you still with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's good. Okay? So, I know na medyo boring po ang law. Okay? Pero wag kayong mag-alala because next meeting, bibigyan ko kayo ng masarap at magandang recitation. Okay? Yung parang level na isusumpa-sumpa nyo ako every question. Pero, I know that later on when you enter law school, you will remember, especially those questions that you fail to answer. Okay? So, yeah. Sana nababasa nyo to. Okay. We proceed with Article 1158. What is Article 1158? Okay. Obligations derived from law are not presumed. Only those expressly determined in this code or special laws are demandable and shall be regulated by the precepts of the law, which establishes them and as to what has not been foreseen by the provisions of this book. So, anong ibig sabihin ng Article 1158, ma'am? Okay? Kindly go over, kasi I'm using po yung e-reviewer. So, if you have notes, you may do so kasi marami naman online. Okay? In Article 1158, okay, ang sabi, ang simple-simple lang yan. Ang mga obligasyon, okay, which are, yung mga obligasyon which are derived from law, galing sa batas, they are not presumed. Bakit? Because it should be provided expressly and in written by the law. Okay, remember your different laws, Republic Act, Administrative Order, or Executive Order, or Memorandum Circular, yung mga yan. So, remember, for an obligation, yung mga obligasyon naggaling sa batas, it must be existing. Okay? Hindi lang dapat siya sabi-sabi. Hindi lang dapat siya isang mere bill. Okay? Di ba yung bill, Senate bill, or yung mga galing pa sa House of Representative, HR bill, ganyan. Hindi dapat ganon. It must be actually passed by law, by the Congress and signed by the President. It must be existing. It must be written. Okay? Because we cannot presume it. We should not presume it. Okay? There is no, okay? There can be no presumption of an obligation arising out of law. Because, tandaan nyo, the law must expressly provide for an obligation. Please do not forget that one. Dapat nakasulat, dapat na-sign, dapat it actually exists. Next one is your Article 1159. I'll give you an example pala doon sa Article 1158. An example is Okay? It is the obligation as prescribed by law of the winner in an illegal gambling, okay, to return the loser the amount which the former won from the latter. Anong ibig sabihin nun, ma'am? Nakalagay po sa batas na pag ang isang sugal, di ba may mga sugal kasing legal yung loto, mga sugal na yan, di ba? Game of chance. Okay? Pag illegal yung gambling, okay, illegal yung sugal, meron pong obligasyon, okay, yung nanalo. Okay, imagine na lugi ka, no? May obligasyon yung nanalo na ibalik yung mga napanalunan mo doon sa natalo. Okay? This law is not just presumed. This is existing. And remember, in that situation, the gambling must be illegal for you to return the money or the amount. Otherwise, syempre, swerte ka, di sa'yo yung pera. Okay? Next one is your Article 1159. Okay? Sana okay pa kayo dyan. I'll just continue to discuss and kung anong matapos natin, okay, I'll continue ko next meeting. We have your Article 1159. What is your Article 1159? In your Article 1159, it provides for obligations, okay, arising from contracts. Contracts naman tayo, tapos na tayo sa law, di ba? Okay, contracts. Arising from contracts has the force of law, okay, between the contracting parties and should comply with good faith. Tatagalog ko. Yung mga obligasyon, okay, na nag-derive or galing sa isang kontrata, okay, ay may epekto na parang batas. Batas nino? Batas ng mga contracting parties. Sino yung mga contracting parties, ma'am? Ang contracting parties are those people or persons whose name appears in the contract. Okay? And ano ang effect nito, ma'am? And ano ang magiging obligasyon nila? The obligation should be complied in good faith. Okay? Remember this one. Once the parties, okay, means pag yung si Pedro at si Ana ay pumasok sa isang kontrata, example, contract of lease, kasi magre-renta ng bahay si Ana, okay, mag-apartment siya dun sa bahay ni Pedro, okay, here, yung kontrata na pinasukan ni Pedro at ni Ana, okay, ay sa mata ng batas, okay, has the effect of law, okay, kahit kontrata lang siya. And the parties, si Pedro at si Ana, has the obligation to perform and to comply in good faith. Okay? At bakit, ma'am, anong mangyayari pag bad faith sila? Okay? The active subject has, okay, or let's just say the passive subject has the right, okay, to rescind the contract or cancel the contract. He can also sue for specific performance or sum of money or damages, can file for damages against the violator. Okay? Next is your Article 1160. Okay? In your Article 1160, it provides for obligations arising from quasi-contracts. Do you know what is a quasi-contract? Okay? Ano ba itong sinasabi ni ma'am na quasi-contract? Okay? When we say quasi-contract, sorry, wala na ata dito sa reviewer na nakuha ko. Okay? When we say quasi-contracts, okay, there are actually two. From the word quasi, ang ibig sabihin po ng quasi, tatagal ko is, or English ko muna, as if, or just like. So, sa Tagalog, parang. Sa Ilocano, kasla. Diba? So, here, kung mag-boyfriend-girlfriend, quasi-boyfriend, quasi-girlfriend lang kayo, kasi wala kayong label, o kaya wala kayong anniversary, o di ba, quasi-boyfriend, quasi-girlfriend lang kayo. Pero nag-I love youhan kayo, o yun, quasi lang kayo. So here, what is a quasi-contract? Ano yung sinasabi ni ma'am na quasi-contract? Okay? A quasi-contract, okay, according to the Supreme Court, okay, a quasi-contractual obligation is actually an obligation imposed by law to do justice even though it is clear that no promise was ever made or intended. Okay. The example the provided, okay, is, for example, if a physician, si doktor, let's just say si Doc Bello, okay, medically attends of a child left in her agony because of parental neglect. Example, may iniwang anak dun sa door ni Doc Bello, okay, because the child is a neglected child. Here, the doctor may recover from the parents in quasi-contracts the value of her services. Okay? I will just discuss to you later on the different quasi-contract. We have your negotiarum gestio and your solution indemnity. Okay? Isa-isahin naman po natin yan. Don't worry. Okay, let's proceed muna dito sa nasa notes ko. The nature and effect of obligation. Let's start with personal versus real obligation. Sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, okay, what is your personal obligation? Ano tong sinasabi nating personal at saka real obligation? Your personal obligation, if you remember your 3 prestation, that is your obligation to do. Okay? That's your obligation to do. Ito nakalagay. But your real obligation, or the one that needs delivery thereof, is your obligation to give. Okay. There's a note here. It provides that generally rights and obligations are transmissible. Ibig sabihin, pwedeng ilipat. Pwede mong i-transfer. Usually, this happens, okay, in a situation, okay, where the obligation is not personal in nature. I will give example later. Okay? Except those that are personal to the party. Examples of obligation that are intransmissible. Ito yung mga obligasyon na hindi mo pwedeng ipasa kasi intransmissible nga siya. Okay? Rights and obligations of the bailee in a contract of comodatum and rights and obligations of a partner in a partnership. Okay? I'll just explain this one to you in a very simple way. Okay? You hired Marian Rivera to dance and to sing in your birthday, okay, for 100,000 per hour. You like Marian so much that you even copied the nose and the mouth and the eyes of Marian. Look-alike na kayo. Okay? Here. Okay? So, nag-agree si Marian to perform in your birthday. However, nagkasakit po si Marian. Nagkakasakit si Marian. Tapos si Marian, okay, sabi niya, ay, Pedro, sorry, let's just say si Maria. Maria, sabi ni Marian, I cannot perform in your birthday kasi may COVID ako. Si Ann Curtis na lang ang mag-perform. Total, pareho lang naman kami ng talent fee. At magaling din naman siyang sumaya at kumanta. Okay? Here, okay, while it may be true that the Ann Curtis can also perform, can also sing and dance, and also likewise equally beautiful with Marian. If by nature of the obligation, okay, you really want Marian to perform, okay, that obligation is now intransmissible. Okay? Next one. Always remember, baka kasabi ko to kanina, always remember that the performance of obligation must be in good faith. Okay? Ano yung sinasabi kong in good faith? That is your Article 19, okay, of the Civil Code, which provides, ito yung shortcut nito is AGO. A-G-O. Every person in the performance and of an obligation must act with justice, give everyone his due, and observe honesty and good faith. Otherwise, Okay? The other person will be entitled for the rescission, cancellation, damages, and a specific performance.